Back in the day when I was learning how to can, I didn't have any canning role models. I didn't grow up with my mother or grandmother canning. There was no YouTube back in those days. At least I don't think there was. Not that I was aware of anyway. So I pretty much had to learn everything on my own, trial and error, read the books. Stocking the pantry was probably my biggest challenge, and it took me a long time to get that right. So today I thought we would talk about 10 things I wish I had had someone tell me when I was starting to build my working canning pantry. So welcome to Garden Preserve. I'm Carter. I'm so glad you're here today. We have a lot of really experienced canners here with us in the audience, and we've really had a lot more brand new canners start up, and I get a lot of great beginner type questions, and I want to make sure that I address all of those as thoughtfully as I can when I respond in comments. But I thought it would be a great idea to lay out 10 things I wish I had known that took me years to kind of work through, honestly, with trial and error, because I didn't know how to build a working pantry except that you went to the grocery store once or twice a week to get whatever it was you needed to turn something into dinner, right? So I had no idea what I was doing. This would have saved me a lot of time, trouble, effort, I don't know, guesswork. So I'm going to give you my 10 things I wish I had known, and then I hope that all of my experienced avid canners will chime in down below. Please, let's share some great information today. What is it you wish you had known when you started canning, or when you started building out your pantry to make it as useful as it is to you today? So here we go. The first thing, I wish somebody had sat me down and said, Carter, figure out what it is you want your pantry to do for you. Is it there to be your source to make a meal anytime you want? You can go in and you can put meals together, complete meals. Or is it something where you want to just replace like the condiments and things like that you're buying at the grocery store? So perhaps you're spending less money, but you know for a fact you're getting better ingredients than what you would find in, your Heinz ketchup or whatever at the grocery store, right? So that's an option, totally valid option. Is it really a gift closet? And for a long time, mine was kind of a gift closet in that I would make beautiful jars. I mean, just beautiful jars with the intent of giving those as Christmas gifts, teacher gifts. I was doing all this when my kids were young. So I had all these teacher gifts and coach gifts and room mom and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of that. Or do you just want your canning pantry to be a way to take advantage of all of the fresh seasonal produce as it comes in, either from your garden or the farmer's market or the store or the roadside stand or wherever you find it? Do you just want to capture those flavors because you love peaches and you want to can up a bunch of peaches or pears or make jams or jellies and, all that kind of wonderful stuff, hot pickled relish, there's one of my husband's favorites. So a lot of what I do is make sure I capture these for my husband each and every summer when I have all those hot peppers coming out of the garden. So another totally valid option is to just make it a pantry to take advantage of sales. So maybe you find chicken breasts on sale, or you find pork butt on sale, or chicken legs on sale, or whatever. So let's just buy it on sale, and instead of stocking up a freezer, which has some vulnerabilities if the power goes out, let's get it on the shelf so it's always there, shelf stable. And maybe you have, well, these days you don't find 99-cent chicken very often, but let's say you have $2 a pound chicken on your shelf, and it's in the store, it's running $5.99 a pound now. Well, that is a tremendous use of your pantry space. So it can be any of these things, or it can be all of these things. And quite frankly, my pantry at this point is all of these things wrapped up together. So I thought we would talk about how to kind of wrap all of these things in together and how to get it to the point where it can meet all of these goals just from the same pantry. Okay, so that was number one. Define what it is you want your pantry to do for you. Now let's move on to number two. And here is, I don't know why this one took me a couple of times to learn, but can what you eat. If you don't normally eat canned green beans, well, don't can green beans. If you don't eat canned carrots, don't don't can your carrots, right? So if you don't like beef stew, don't make 16 jars of beef stew and stick them on the pantry, assuming that you're suddenly going to love beef stew. So along that same vein, you wouldn't want to make 16 jars of something you haven't tried home canned before. So make a couple of jars. I have a couple of videos, and I'll link to those up above or down below, that gives you like a sampler pack of soups and stews and that kind of stuff. I do a lot of double batch things. So you end up with 4 jars of something versus 8 jars of something, or 2 jars of something versus 8 jars of something. So try it in small batches and make sure you do like it before you put all of that time, energy, money, and jars into that product. So along that same line, what is it that helps you pull a meal together? Is it flavorings? Is it condiments? Is it relishes? Is it barbecue sauce? Is it, whatever that is, think through those things and see if you can make them instead. That way you know you're going to use them. Okay, number 3. This one is another one I learned the hard way. Choose the right size jars. When I first started, and I was doing this for gifts, right? There's a recipe in the Ball book for, I think it's called squash pickles or something like that. Anyway, I used green and yellow zucchini, some red peppers, I think there's some onions in there. Stunningly beautiful jar. But I felt like a little pint-sized jar didn't show my appreciation to the teachers enough, or the neighbors, or whatever. So I made them in quart-sized jars. Well, let me tell you, it is a commitment to open a quart-sized jar of squash pickles because there are a lot of squash pickles in there. And as much as I love them, it would just float around my refrigerator forever, right? So it's that way with all kinds of different things. So there are just the 2 of us here at home, so I don't make quart-size jars of beef or chicken breast that I know we can't possibly get through in one day, maybe not even 2. Sometimes with a pint of chicken, I may be making something like a chicken tortilla soup or something like that, or chicken burritos, and I end up with tons of leftovers for the next day. Well, if I have another essentially pint, a half quart floating around the refrigerator, when am I going to get to that? So make sure that you use jars in the right size for your family. I do a lot of my condiments in those little 4-ounce jars because you only use a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons maybe of like a chutney if you're serving a pork roast or something like that. So think that through too. Don't end up with this giant jar of squash pickles floating around your refrigerator or intimidate the heck out of the people you give it to. Okay, so item number 4 on the list is your pantry is not going to look like anybody else's pantry, nor should it. So just because you see someone on YouTube who has beautiful orange jars of carrots and beautiful green jars of green beans or asparagus, or purple jars of beets or whatever, and it looks gorgeous, and you think, oh, all healthy stuff, I should have that on my pantry shelf. Well, not if you're not going to eat it. In my family, I don't like canned green beans. I like fresh green beans, kind of lightly seared, and that's it. I'm not going to eat them canned. David won't eat them anyway at all. He doesn't like cooked carrots, so I'm not going to can carrots. I do some pickled beets just for me to occasionally put in a salad, but he won't eat them. So my pantry isn't going to have those kind of things in it. Whereas we are very heavy into some like Tex-Mex kind of flavors and things. So I may have a lot of the hot pickled peppers and mango salsa and all of those kind of things in there that you may not have, and that's fine too. So make sure that your pantry reflects what you eat and how much of whatever it is that you eat. So don't go making 24 jars of salsa if you only have, tacos 4 times a year. So your pantry should scream you. Mine should scream me. So at this point in my canning life, my pantry really reflects us. However, we still evolve, I suppose, over the years, and we don't eat as many of the same things as we used to. So I used to do a lot of prepared meals, the beef stew, the chili, that kind of stuff. And we still go through a decent amount of that, particularly David. If I'm not here, if I'm not cooking, if I'm not hungry, if whatever, it is super easy for him to grab one of those. But I used to have teenagers at home. And I tell you what, we went through those jars like nobody's business. I would get up in the morning and I'd have like 4 less jars because I had an 18-year-old who would come get hungry at 2 o'clock in the morning. And at least I knew he was eating beef stew and chicken corn chowder that I had made from home rather than Dinty Moore or, you know, whatever it is from the grocery store, or a bag of Lay's or Doritos, or, you know, well, he did eat the Doritos. But anyway, I knew that I was doing something good, but we were going through a ton of prepared meals at that time. Not as many now, still plenty, and I still keep them on the shelf, and David greatly appreciates them, and I greatly appreciate not having to always have to figure out the answer to what can I eat. Okay, the next item, for me, is a piece of advice that works kind of for life, right? For pretty much everything I do, every project I start, everything. Start with the end in mind. So before we talked about figure out what you want your pantry to do for you. We talked about that. So what is the end goal that you want out of your pantry? Well, when you go to can something, I want you to think about the end in mind there as well before you start canning. So if you're going to can some beef, you're going to do some raw pack beef, how are you going to use that? So you need at least 2, 3, 4 ideas of how you're going to use that, or you're going to make it, it's going to sit on the shelf, and on one of these, oh my gosh, what's for dinner? Let me grab something out of the pantry. You're going to look at it and go, oh, what can I do with that? So start with the end in mind, know how you're going to use some things. You don't have to know all the ways, but just have a couple of ideas. And maybe those ideas don't even work out, but it evolves into something else. So always have some idea of what you're going to do with what you're going to put all that hard work and money into. So when I was working full-time, my husband was working full-time, I had kids at home, they had volleyball and soccer and wrestling and all kinds of things going on. One of the things that really saved my sanity in that what's for dinner scramble every night was having some go-to combinations in my pantry. So one of them currently is, let me see, pulled pork, barbecue sauce, baked beans, and French fries. This is probably one of David's favorite meals. You'll notice there's nothing green in there. However, I can always throw a salad on the side. So another one that's really easy is stew beef, some zesty salsa. I can cook that up together. I've got hot pickled peppers. I can do that just in a bowl by itself, which I do often because we're keto. Or I can put it in a tortilla, a taco shell. I can put it on top of some rice, maybe with some beans on the side. So there are just so many things you can do with this, and it's just an instant dinner, and we're completely done. So let's look at another one. It's Italian sausage and hash browns. I can turn this into a frittata if I have eggs. That's all I need. If I have other vegetables, that's great. You know, I always have salad growing down in the grow room, so I can always put it with a side salad. Dinner is done. Super easy. Here's another one. Corned beef and hash brown potatoes. Corned beef hash with some fried eggs is one of our favorite weekend breakfasts. So that I always try to keep on the shelf, and in fact, it's about time to make some more corned beef. So here's some of the prepared meals I try to keep on the shelf all the time. Beef stew, it's really good. This is really good, even though we're keto. I think the carb count in this is like 10 net carbs. So it does have some potatoes in it, some carrots in it, but it is tremendous. This is chili. This one is without beans, but I have chili with beans as well. We love that. With some chicken and some salsa verde. I can turn this into a chicken white chili with some chicken broth as well. I can turn it into chicken burritos. Ooh, I can turn it into chicken enchiladas, and I have some green hot sauce, which is not so hot it can't be like a green enchilada sauce. So having some go-to meals on your shelf is gonna save you lots of frustration. Okay, so another thing it took me a while to get past, and I've talked about this in one of my pantry tours, is that you need to use what you can. Don't just sit there and stare at it and admire your hard work and how beautiful it is sitting on the pantry shelf. You actually need to use what you have, because seeing the beautiful creation, that's only half the fun. The other half of the fun is being able to use it and put together combinations and feed your family and have that pantry work for you in a way that gets dinner on the table in 10 or 15 minutes with very little thought or effort on your part, because you've done all of that beforehand. So enjoy the fruits of your labor. Don't just sit there and admire them. And I did that for quite some time, because I was making all those beautiful jars for gifts, right? And they're just all these beautiful colors, and I'd just be mesmerized. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that. Well, eat the darn food. Use it, make it work for you. You put all that time and effort and money into it, make sure you use it. Okay, the next one, label your jars. Label and date. Trust me, you think you're gonna remember, you won't remember. Your husband will have no idea what's in that jar. The kids won't know what's in that jar. That means you're always the one having to go to the pantry, rather than saying, honey, can you run down and pick up this, this, and this from the pantry shelf? So I do have a couple that break my own rules. However, they really are easy to see. So hash browns and French fries. But let's say I had this unlabeled. Well, I don't know if there are onions and garlic in that. I don't know if it's crushed tomatoes, stewed tomatoes. It is crushed tomatoes, by the way. I didn't label my broth. I don't know whether that's chicken broth, turkey broth, a beef broth that turned out way too light. You just don't know. What about that one? What is that? David would not know. He might think it's chili. He might hope it's chili, but it could be anything as far as he knows. So if I don't label that and label what type of chili it is, he won't know. So label and date everything. Okay, item number 9 is pay attention to what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You're not going to get everything right on the first try. Your tastes are going to change, your family size is going to change, your diet may change. All of these things will impact how your pantry needs to look at the moment, right? So as we talked about earlier, I used to have just tons of prepared meals because I had kids who were eating them all the time. Now I have some. I have a little David section in my pantry, and it keeps him totally satisfied, but it doesn't need to be 4 shelves. One is just fine. So make sure you know what's working for you, what's not working for you. Did you can enough of this? Did you can too much of this? Are you not using that old barbecue sauce recipe? I have one of these. Not using that old barbecue sauce recipe because I found a new one I liked. Well, I still need to cycle through the old barbecue sauce before I get into the one I really like. So make sure that you are keeping track of what does and doesn't work, what you do want to do again, what you don't want to do again, how things have changed, and you keep your pantry up to date so that when you go down there, it really does meet all of your needs. Okay, number 10, and this is a big one. And again, I had no access to this when I was learning to put my pantry together, and that is always feel free to ask an experienced or avid canner anything about things they can, things they don't can anymore, things they like to use, how they put their pantry together. If you are really an avid canner, clearly I love to talk about canning, and I can talk about it weekly to you. However, all of us who are really into canning and appreciative of what it has done for our family and how it's put our pantry together and how it saves us money and how it prepares us for, a neighbor popping over, or you get a last minute invitation to dinner and you've got to grab something to take as a hostess gift kind of thing. The kids are home and you've got 45 minutes between now and when you have to leave to take them to soccer practice. And you can pull dinner together in like no time, maybe 10 minutes. They can eat, get washed up, and then you're ready to go out the door. Those kind of accomplishments are things that we like to talk about. So always feel free to ask an experienced canner, what's the favorite thing you can? How do you use your pantry? What will you not can again? What on earth do you do with raw packed chicken or raw packed meat? What are the things you can every single year? What are the things you keep stocked in your pantry because they're so useful to you? Ask those questions. So I've given you my 10 things I wish I had known when I started canning and building my pantry. So I want my experienced canners to chime in, keep adding to that list. If you want to answer any other questions you get from new canners all the time, you know, how you put your pantry together, what it is that it does for you, how it works best, your favorite things to can, feel free to answer all those questions. And I want my new canners, you know, take advantage of all that knowledge, because you have a tremendous group of experienced canners here in the comments section. Ask more questions, read what they have to say. So with that, I'm going to open up the comments. I hope that my experienced canners are going to chime in with all of your wisdom. I hope that my new canners will read through those comments. I hope you'll continue to ask questions. I welcome you here. There's nothing I want more than to grow your new canning pantry with you. So take advantage of the resources you have here. And I thank you so much. I hope you got some great value out of this video. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe. It really helps the algorithm kind of keep me in the mix. So I thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Happy canning. Bye-bye.